So, gentlemen, to start us off, I hope you can all see me here. As we get more and more accustomed to 3D, CGI, MC, and overwhelmingly high-tech in all of our entertainment, is technology helping storytelling, or is it impeding it? Jay, let's start with you.
Technology, from the standpoint of what we do at HBO, it literally, year after year, continues to be an element of what we do. I remember a few years ago when the IT group would come from New York and sit and we'd chat about, the IT department and what we're doing in the production department. And that has transformed now that we sit with the IT people and we actually brainstorm with them about things that we're using to make production. And the two have and it's nice to see people around the office that actually get that and see as an exciting thing that it's all meshing together. And it's not only in front of the camera, it's behind the camera, it's in the office. It's all coming together that way.
And Robert, I know you're in the gaming sector, and you certainly used to be with EA. I spoke to some gamers actually before the event tonight, who said that they are concerned that technology is starting to water down the story of the game and the actual gamesmanship. How would you solve that problem?
Well, I would join BBC worldwide for one. BBC is considered storytellers to the world, and honestly, sincerely, if you've got the ability to work with incredibly smart IP creators who are willing to offer up parts of their world for other platforms such as gaming or apps, which we're able to do at BBC, the level of quality you can achieve is truly remarkable. So from a technology standpoint, there's also benefits. We're working right now in a great relationship with Fox on a release of Walking with Dinosaurs as a reboot of the brand in 2013. And it's extraordinary to look at how we can take some of the assets developed for the film and really work them across all the different platforms that we're working at. So for me, there are advantages. If you have good storytelling, there's no reason why it can't translate to other media.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about 3D. I was having a discussion tonight with Chris Cookson of Sony about it, and certainly it's been a hot topic in the news. It's no secret that 3D ticket sales have been falling a bit in the United States, and investors and audiences, there's evidence to show, are getting maybe a little weary of the technology. Fred, where are we going to see 3D come to the home? When are we going to see 3D come to the home?
Well, 3D is in the home now. Any of you who have seen 3D, the processing, the capability, the power of a 3D device is phenomenal. Whether you use it to watch standard def TV or you want to watch a 3D entertainment is a different subject. I think, 3D, what came out in CES of 2010, where it was supposed to be the be-all, the end-all, the whole market was going to shift into a 3D environment. Well, clearly, I think, like every new technology, there are market segments, there are applications where it does make sense, whether it's in sports or whether it's in movies. And I think really the difference is the speed of the introduction and the adoption technology is actually slower than what people thought. But I believe we are on a trend. It is going to continue. It is going to be in more devices. It will be more content, and it'll ultimately be in a home. Albeit it will have its uniqueness, its niches, and its applications, just like any other technology.
Bill, you told me you were pleasantly surprised recently with your experience with Harry Potter in 3D. Can you talk about that?
Well, I was a slow adopter to 3D. I didn't really believe in it because just as a consumer, because I personally prefer the 2.4 aspect ratio when I like bigger movies, and we were very careful about what we were going to do with Harry Potter because it was a very important franchise to us, and it means as much to the rest of the world as it does to us, based on the book sales and ticket sales to the theater, but I was remarkably. I just thought the job they did was remarkable. We didn't shoot it in 3D; we converted it. We believe that the headroom for the technological headroom for conversion is probably greater than than for development of cameras. You know, I may be proven wrong, but we've sort of adopted the idea that we would first look at shooting it in 2D and converting it to 3D. And most of the directors and producers we work with are actually more comfortable in 2D. But you know, you have to, I think, credit 3D with the acceleration of the proliferation of digital cinema. Because, you know, digital cinema was crawling along very slowly, and then when Avatar came out and everybody was making so much money in 3D, it greatly accelerated the installation of digital cinema across the world.
I know you have something to say about this.
I'll throw a little vinegar in the stew here, because I'm not so sure about 3D. As a venture capitalist, a phrase that is often used is there's an infinite demand for the unavailable. And, you know, first, until you get rid of the glasses, it's not going to happen. Well, we could do a test actually right here. After all of you saw George Bailey put on the Sony visor, how many are going to go out and buy the Sony visor? Yeah, we got some early adopters. But just to build on that thought, because I think it's an important one, and it's an important one for Sony. The technology in that entertainment piece is probably done. And we may not like the visor, but I like to tell the story about, as a venture capitalist not long ago, a group of video game producers came in, and they had developed a technology whereby a video game was able to play on your windshield of your car while you were driving. And so they didn't get money, but what the technology showed was that they were able to produce a video game that was clear on both sides. So somewhere in the Sony visor is a technology that someday we are all going to use. I just don't know what it is yet, and probably Sony doesn't know either, but I'll enjoy watching George Bailey walking around with that visor on. But I think it's a good way to explain how technology and entertainment is emerging, because we don't know where it's going, but we're experimenting, and out of it is going to come a lot of big products.
So Fred, as the CEO of a technology company, a software company, when you hear investors like Rich say, look, we're kind of doubtful, does that make you rethink your strategy?
No, not at all, actually, because we haven't really invested a lot in 3D technology relative to our product set. So I guess I support your ultimate view that there is an application. I agree with you that until you remove the glasses, because people who watch TV in home, it's a multi-dimensional environment. They're reading, they're looking down, they're working on tablets, PCs, whatever. They're getting up, and it's not an easy transition to that. But look, 3D is just an example of the enormous innovation that's going on in home entertainment broadly, right? The internet is fundamentally changing home entertainment as it has changed so many other industries before, at the same time as the internet is shifting the power of distribution to new parts of the system, where it's increasing the shift to the consumer being more powerful, having more access points to get content. At the exact same time, all CE devices are becoming connected to take advantage of the internet. That part of the transformation of home entertainment is going to be more encompassing, more substantive, more transformative to this industry than 3D or probably most any other thing that's going on.
Well, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about people watching their entertainment on the internet. You know, in the second quarter, the six largest cable and satellite providers lost over 500,000 subscribers. Is this a sign that audiences want to move their entertainment more into the cloud and via the internet?
When I was at Yahoo, I read a study that talked about kids going to movie theaters. And they said they hated going to the movies, a certain percentage of them, a scandalous certain percentage of them, because it was dark, they weren't allowed to talk, and they weren't allowed to text. And I think that's happening in the home too. I think what you're seeing in the home is a sense of, 50% of the people watching television are on their computers. 30% of kids under 27 are actually getting most of their TV off the internet. So things are shifting in that direction. I think things are shifting in a direction too where people are multitasking as they're doing television watching. And as a result, we're seeing a lot of activity right now around dual screen apps. You know, can we actually have an app that's like synced with audio marking to your TV show that's actually bringing the community together as they're watching the television? All that in an effort to tether people back to the show that they're actually watching. So I think there's ways around what's going on, but it's definitely a change in the landscape, if that answers your question.
If I can just add, I think the technology right now is way ahead of what the consumer is willing to accept. You know, when we talk about split screens and lots of other new innovations, I would bet that 90% of the homes in the United States are still dealing with 3 or 4 different remote devices that they, you know, here's the TV, here's all the other devices, and there's not one remote. So part of what they're doing is because the technology is so far ahead of them, they're just going to the PC, and because it's easier.
So I differ in one dimension, okay? And people talk about the availability of content over the internet and immediately jump to the conclusion that that's PC. And in reality, the internet is so embedded in every other device that's out there is that the PC is almost irrelevant. To the multitasking issue, people would want to, as access points become more enabled to the consumer, the individual customer has the ability to get the video through mobile, through tablets, through PCs, through TVs, through Blu-ray devices, through a plethora of devices that are out there. So the notion that I'm connecting an IP distribution or an internet availability of content to a PC is no longer pertinent. It's the internet availability of content across all of the devices that people have in the homes.
I agree. I misspoke.
I think one of the things that you always do is you look to children very often for innovation and the future. And I know as I've watched my boys, at one point, there was some HBO programming that maybe wasn't appropriate, but as they've gotten older now and want to watch HBO all the time, it's been fascinating to watch them go around the house. And one son will usually be, he's going to sleep at night, and when he finally got aware of True Blood, he was watching that every night. Then they would go to different TVs, then they'd get their laptop and they'd start watching it there. Then I showed them HBO Go on my iPad, and to them it's wherever they are and wherever it's easiest to do it. It doesn't matter what it comes in to them. And very often they're doing other things, so sometimes they're doing their homework and let them watch a little TV. But it's interesting to see that, and that in many ways, when we talk about things around HBO and technology, you have to listen, you have to look, and it's the people in a sense are going to tell you what's going to be the most practical thing. I think you're absolutely right. The technology tends to be ahead, but on a human level, what feels most comfortable? And you need to listen and just look at your kids, and they're going to lead you down that path.
Well, I can tell you from my own experience, I have a 14-year-old. He watches almost all of his television on his iPad. But I'll tell you, he spends almost all of his time gaming online. Not watching TV, but gaming online with all his friends.
Bill, that's interesting that you say that that your son watches his content on the iPad, because there are now multi-platform studios cropping up, not least of whom is Vuguru by a man I think a few of us have heard of, Michael Eisner, that only produces content for streaming devices and the internet and soon to be the cloud. So are these micro studios, as they're being called, that are getting significant investment, are they flashes in the pan, or are they the studios of the future?
I guess time will tell. It's going to depend on how well managed they are too, and whether they can control their content.
I mean, presumably they're the content is a lot less expensive to make, so they have an easier time proliferating.
But as always, discovery is the issue, right? How are people finding this content? And that's one of the disadvantages of that approach. Is just like with mobile apps, just like with most of these devices, finding the content is not as easy as you'd think. And so that's a challenge in web videos and webisodes and things like that.
How about cost? How has technology helped the cost of traditional content? Jay, you and I had a discussion about a camera and how it helped you do something that would have been too expensive to do in a more traditional way for the look you wanted?
Yeah, I think one of the things right now for us is certainly in terms of the post-production aspect of things, technology was in there quite early, but one of the things that was kind of late was the actual palette that the cameramen were working in, and that film for a long time. There hasn't been anything better than film in terms of an artist dealing with a palette. And when we were actually looking at Game of Thrones, we were kicking around the idea of, how do you save money? And we talked about costs, as George was saying all the time. And yet, as wanting to support the creative endeavor, what you're trying to do is support the artist with the best tools all the time. And so we were looking at Game of Thrones, and we said, well, historically, we would never even thought of not shooting this on film. But you know what? We talk to people all the time. There's this new camera that Ari has called the Alexa. We'd heard some things about it. And they gave us some of the early prototypes. We did a test. We brought it back to the office, and literally people were sitting there, and they couldn't tell the difference. Now, we could see some things technically, but really it was quite unusual for us to have this kind of picture be shot with a camera like that. And lo and behold, we ran the numbers, and we were going to save some money. And we said, to the people on the show, would you rather be shooting an extra week or two, or shoot on film? At the end of the day, we felt it was a good thing to try. We called up Ari. We asked them for some cameras at the time. They only had a few cameras out, and we needed quite a few to film this, so they gave us the cameras. And lo and behold, I don't know how many people here have seen all aspects of Game of Thrones. I don't think there's been one review that said it wasn't shot on film. And so that was a place where we took a little bit of a risk, and people have been shooting on digital for quite a few years, but there's that point when it switches over, and I think most people, a lot has been written in the last year about the capabilities of high def, and we believe we're at a point where the film will always be there, but we've struck a moment where this new technology is actually giving us a lot more to play with.
Bill, you've spoken about passing on movies that have incurred very high costs or would incur high costs because of their technology. Can you speak about technology as a big ticket item? While Jay talks about it as a cost-saving item, it's not always so.
Well, the cameras, what camera you use is largely going to depend on what you're shooting. Some cameras are more suitable for certain subjects than other cameras. And the American Society of Cinematographers just did a test this year where they put all the different cameras that they could find up against each other, and pretty much the conclusion was, if you want to shoot this sort of thing, the Alexa is the best, or the Sony camera is the best for this particular one, film is better for this, the red camera was better for this, because there's so many cameras out there. And I get people calling me all the time trying to sell me their new innovations, and when I'm the first one through the door, it doesn't save me any money, and it's largely because we don't know how to manage it. The best way to save money making a feature is to cut the number of days that you're shooting and cut the number of weeks that you're in post. But I have a problem because I'm tied to contracts with the Directors Guild and others that specify a number of weeks that I have to do certain things. So unless the DGA gives up some of their director's cut time, or and I'm not trying to suggest that the DGA is standing in the way of progress, because if you go to them and say, we have a release date, they'll give us dispensation for that. But I find that if I'm the first one that's using it, that it's not saving me money.
I think a bigger question for the studios and all the content providers and the game developers is, the truth is no one cares how much it costs you guys. And what we're moving toward is an expectation, an assumption from users that it will all be free. No matter what it is, it's going to be free. And if it's not free, they'll figure out a way to get it free. And I think your cost conundrum is going to be, how do you maintain your costs and over time meet that expectation that it's going to be free?
I couldn't agree more on that. And the freemium model is what we call it in the game space, which is you get free content, and then if you want upgrades, you want to deck out your character, you want to get new levels to explore, you actually pay for those. And that pay-to-play model, that sense of you taste something before you actually start investing in it, has a really good benefit, which is quality rises to the surface, because people will, test something out. If they don't like it, they'll get rid of it. The challenge is, how do you make money in that space? And everyone's facing that challenge across all the different gaming platforms, for one, but I suspect this will go beyond gaming.
And Robert, speaking of gaming platforms and multi-platforms, when you're planning a project today, do you think in terms of one particular medium, or do you think more in a 360-degree model?
I've been very privileged since starting at BBC little under 2 years ago to be able to work with the IP developers to really think through 360 development on the digital front and the gaming front. So as an example, we launched Torchwood on Starz this summer and on BBC One and multiple channels around the world. And even before the first script was written, I was able to get in with Russell T Davies and create a plan with his writers to develop a app for iPhone and iPad that would be a companion piece to the show. It was part motion comic, which is kind of animated storytelling, part game, and it was written by the writers of the show, including Jane Espenson. It was voiced by the talent of the show, including John Barrowman. They created new characters for us. They offered up their story world for us to explore in the app space, and it was a great experience. We introduced a new character, and we did a bunch of new stuff, and it's just very innovative. And that kind of approach, I think, is going to be, you see more and more, where the people creating the linear media are really, really interested in investing in how do we create story worlds on other platforms simultaneously to really give fans content where the fans happen to be.
Now, Jay, you told me if you water it down too much, you lose the essence in relation to this topic.
Well, I think in terms of HBO, what's been interesting is that there were some, as technologies have come on, we've tried things, we did some things on the web and so on and so forth. And what we've come around to, in fact, I was in a meeting today about a new show we're doing with Julie Louise-Dreyfus, Veep, and there were some conversations about the internet and social media, and can we do some things? And all of a sudden, the show's producer said, "Well, I've got a team of directors and writers, and you know what? If you have these things that you want, just come to us. Come to us." And what we're finding in terms of HBO is that yes, our core is our programming, but because of the kind of programming it is, it's leading us down these paths of these other applications, and that's what we're finding, as opposed to sitting down and saying, well, we're going to create a show that in essence is something that everybody can see. Let's get to the essence of what the show is. There are people out there that want that, and let's give it to them in ways that they think that potentially is going to be really interesting for them, and they'll find those things. So it's a little bit of reverse engineering that way, but for us, that's how it works. We start with something that at its essence is a great story, is being told at a very high quality level, and that's how what we've found with the technology and the innovations that are out there, that it's leading us to explore and figure out, is Twitter something that people want to know about on the show? Is that a way for the actors to connect with people? Do they want to go? I mean, we have people that sit there, and as the show's airing on Sunday night, they're watching the blogs and the social media, and they pick up things, and we talk to the filmmakers about it.
Well, and that's a very good point about social media. Studios were so resistant for so long to market via social media. There was obviously the fear of piracy, the fear of spoilers. Rich, these days, is it adapt or die?
Yes. It is adapt or die. I can speak to that point as an author. And when I wrote my first book, it was easy. You sent a manuscript, they sent a contract, you signed the contract, they launched the book, and you hoped it was a success. And now, as you all know, the publishing industry there are actually more books published today than there were 10 years ago, but each of them sell progressively less because once the deal is signed, then it's up to the author to do Facebook, to do Twitter, to do all the other channels that will make for basically a platform. Any author's in the same business as all of you. It's we're creating a platform, and it's a lot of work. And so the good news is that there's more content out there. The better news is that there's more platforms for it to be on. But the way it has changed publishing, when there's no going back, it's a brand new world, just as it is with each of your businesses.
I have a comment to make around the notion of adapting or dying. You can either fight something, fight the progression of the technology, the transformation that's going on in the market, and I think the clear example of that was what happened when the record labels decided that they did not want to allow Napster, that they started to fight the electronic distribution of music, ultimately realized that they couldn't, and then they decided to hang on to Apple and iTunes as their only early source of monetizing electronic songs. I actually look at it as a different way. If the studios or the industry broadly and all of the players in the industry didn't look at it as just an adaptation, but as I look at it, within any market discontinuity, there are unique opportunities to take advantage of it. And rather than think I just have to merely adapt, that if I could be innovative, if I could be really progressive, if you heard the speaker that was on the screen earlier about being willing to take risk and innovate and risk failure, there are unique opportunities for this industry to completely transform into a new advantage and take advantage of the transformation and new opportunities that exist, as opposed to think of it just in terms of adaptation. It's a different mindset of just what's going on within our industry.
Right. And what I meant to describe, although it sounded like I probably was whining about how difficult it is, I actually believe that right now, and this crowd is a part of it, where we are in Silicon Valley is Florence during the Renaissance. There are so many exciting things going on that we need to take advantage of it rather than complain about it, because it's a fast-moving train and we need to be on that train.
Robert, you called social media a new relationship with your audience, and also that Nielsen is old news and that the new ratings are through Facebook and Twitter. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I'm not sure I would subscribe to that quote exactly, but I will tell you that what I'm liking about the digital space is that we're actually developing what I would call actionable analytics. We are completely analytically approach where we can be. So for example, we've developed on my team a social analytics dashboard that can actually, during the sort of course of a run of Doctor Who, for example, our big sci-fi series, we can actually map out Twitter activity across geolocated around the globe, and we also do sentiment analysis and sort of what they're talking about. So during the course of a weekend of Torchwood episodes or Doctor Who, whatever it is, we actually know how people feel about very detailed moments of the show. That in turn can help us influence what we do in the gaming space or the digital space in a live way. We're getting to know our consumers in a new way. Right now we're developing a giant, massively multiplayer online game for Doctor Who, one of our big sci-fi brands, like I said. And we're going to be able to register users, get their email addresses, really understand how they're interacting with the brand in a new way, and be able to feed that back to the creators of the show, who are also working with us right now, and that will hopefully better inform their creative as well. So I think the kind of data we're getting is actually super, super useful, and I think it's going to be more and more relied on as time goes by.
How about investing? I've spoken to a lot of VCs and private equity firms who said they'd love to invest in technologies and entertainment. They'd love to invest in the entertainment sector, but there's not a lot to invest in these days. Rich, do you disagree?
The issue with, especially in venture investing in entertainment now, is that the belief is that a lot of the deals are too small. So if you invest in a game company or a new technology, it might be a fine company, but it's not going to be a huge company, and the returns are not going to be the size that they want. Venture investors will not invest in a lot of pure content, will not invest in movies, for example, but they will invest in technologies where the phrase I like to use is there's a glimmer of greatness. So the technology might not be great yet, but we can see a glimmer in the technology. It's like the Sony visor. I see a glimmer in that technology, but would I invest in it yet? I need to see a little bit more of the story behind it. But the venture investment community knows better than anyone that technology, entertainment, content, it's all converging. The apps world, everything is coming together. And any company who can pull that together and show that it's going to be a big idea, not a small idea, I think there's still money available to invest.
Bill, when someone's pitching you a new technology and the next big camera or the next post-production software tool, what's your red flag?
If they come to me directly, that's the first red flag. They usually go to somebody like Chris Cookson first. I have a director of technology with me that I steer everybody towards because I really don't know enough about it to really comment on it.
The red flag, I'll help you out, Bill. The red flag is we have no competition.
Well, there's also a red flag that says you can do it faster, better, cheaper. That there's no such thing.
Fred, I'm sure you've heard some red flags in your day with ideas and technology.
Yeah, in addition to the no competition, we're the only ones, the market is going like gangbusters. We're going to continue to double revenues for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years. It's, multi-billion-dollar opportunities waiting to happen.
Okay. In honor of our special guest, we obviously need to address globalization. And as you do business outside of the United States, I'd like to hear about what are the critical requirements, technologically speaking, in order to make a movie, in order to make a television show, in order to invest in some of these technologies. And Jay, I'll start with you because, of course, you've had this wonderful experience in Northern Ireland.
I think one of the things that, and you're kind of sitting with business people up here right now, but when I go around and talk to people outside the entertainment business and I'm trying to explain what we do, I often say, well, think of a traditional business. And this was very interesting when we came to Northern Ireland because we were dealing with Invest Northern Ireland. And in a sense, a lot of the people we were encountered were people that were treating us as a traditional business, which was very interesting because the reality is that there's an aspect which is very fun and glamorous, but behind that is a very traditional business model. And when somebody comes in and pitches us a story, it's kind of like the venture capitalist. Do you like this idea? What do you think? And so on and so forth. And we are the bank. And so we have to sit there and make a business decision about how we're going to handle that particular project. And in the case of Northern Ireland, it was the same thing for us to go and say, we're bringing this business, this television series, and we need to make a business decision about what's this going to experience be like in Northern Ireland. And this is a little bit of the theme tonight that I really want to emphasize in terms of Northern Ireland, that this is a television series we could have filmed many places around the world. There were certain things that led us to Northern Ireland, but there were other places we were looking at as well. And I really want to credit Peter and Martin in particular with stepping up, reaching out to us, embracing us. People have heard things about Northern Ireland, and for us to get there, walk around the city and feel at home, and to feel the energy of the people there, to feel the creativity of the people there. And along with that, to understand that we could functionally do the business things well, really had a very big impact on us making this business decision. And that was, it was at the essence of what led us to film Game of Thrones right there in Belfast.
Robert, you do business both here and in the UK and abroad, but you particularly seem to commute on a regular basis. What do you find as your critical requirements?
Yeah, well, BBC Worldwide has as its charter to invest in the creative industries in the UK. And so in the last 7 years, we've invested, I think, £1 billion across the UK in creative. And to answer your question, Eric Schmidt, the chairman of Google, addressed the Edinburgh TV Festival a couple of weeks ago. And one of his big points, in addition to scandalizing everyone by saying there's 48 hours of video uploaded to Google every minute, which freaked the TV audience, TV maker audience out. He also said that he lamented the drift to the humanities in the UK and worried that there's not enough science and technology education going on. And so I would just, when we're looking for technology companies to work with, we want to see, innovation, we want to see quality, all the things you'd imagine. But one of the things that we're noticing is we're finding that in the places with the best schools. And the best universities, prepping people properly. So that's one thing we kind of look for, centers of excellence around universities that can really recruit great talent. And I think that's something everyone should keep in mind.
I think we have time for my final question, which is obviously about the future, if we're going to be addressing innovation in entertainment. I'd like to hear from each of you. We've seen color, stereo sound, 3D, certainly the progression of every kind of special effect that I can imagine. What is the next big technological innovation that's going to revolutionize the entertainment industry? And Fred, why don't we start with you?
This is a question I hate to start on. Honestly, as opposed to thinking that there is yet the next horizon that's there, of which there is, don't get me wrong, we have gone through, and there is so much change that is staring right in front of us, that the biggest challenge, I think, is not what's next down the road, as much as to the absorption and the capability of what is close in now. What's going to happen over the next 3 years is not going to be, in my opinion, the next brightest development environment or transformation of our industry. It's going to be the absorption, the adoption, and how do companies take advantage of what's right now, here and now, and in front of us as it continues to pervade into the home, changing distribution systems, changing consumer behavior, and how do companies react to that. I think that's the biggest challenge that as an industry, both as the content producers, the distributors, and the CE manufacturers are going to grapple with. And there'll be winners and losers over the next 3 years based upon that transformation.
I think for the big studios, it'll ultimately, I think, be providing content directly to the consumer. Not providing directly to a network or directly to a theater. Although, motion pictures are a social experience as well as an artistic experience. You go out to the movies, you go out and you sit in the dark with other people, and especially with a comedy, if a comedy is going well, the fact that other people around you are laughing enhances that experience for you. But I think ultimately the studios will be distributing directly to the consumer. I don't know when, but I think that's what's going to happen.
So for me, it's more about what technology is enabling. So if we're launching IPs and we're doing it properly in a 360 digital way, where we're touching numbers of platforms and we're thinking cross-platform, the big change in the mindset of everyone who's creating IP is moving away from launch it and leave it, moving more toward what we in the software industry call software as a service model, but launching something that needs constant nurturing, a community that needs constant nurturing, a fan base that needs constant nurturing. And I think that we're going to get more and more sophisticated on, and the technology is enabling us to do that.
I have 2 points. The first one, a little bit to Bill's about distribution. It's something obviously at HBO we are incredibly conscious of. And it's continuing to watch what happens with that distribution. As I said earlier, just how am I going to watch it, what's comfortable for me, and so on and so forth. So that's one area, very important. Secondly was a little bit of a theme here, and you were asking earlier about technology and adaptation. And to me, I've had many people pitch me technological things, front of the camera, behind the camera. And it's the people that come in, and I relate to it the same way I do the really creative filmmakers we work with. They walk in the room, you can tell they're bright people, you can tell they're aware of the world they're living in, you can tell that they listen to people around them, and they take those ideas in, and then they adapt. And when I see that in a person or a company, and when we talked to Ari about the camera, they came in after we worked with Ari Camera, and they talked about how they came up with that camera. And you could tell that that was a very smart company because they listened to everybody in the company and they came up with a product that was the right product at this time and place. And when people walk in a room, we've had people pitch us different things about how to even manage our production process, and we're dealing with a company right now. They're programmers that computer programmers that understand the film business. And when they walked in the room and we said, well, this is what we do day in and day out, they go, well, let's write some code, we can do this and we can do that. That's the kind of people that I look to work with. And when I surround myself with those kind of people, I know I'm going to adapt into the future in a very good way.
I think we don't know, and that's what makes it exciting. I think that Bloomberg might take over the world, and I think that the Sony Visor might be a big hit. But I also, we've been talking about this for a long time, I think the days of the big mega hit might be over. The Harry Potter, because the content is now so personalized and there's so many different channels. And for those of you who are in the game business and the studio business, I mean, this is not what you like to hear. But the days of the super, super huge mega hit might be over. And the good news is that we can adapt and customize our own content depending on who we are, where we are, and what device is in front of us.
Well, thank you, panel. I'm sure we'll be looking to all five of you for what's the role of the future of innovation and entertainment. I want to thank the panelists, and I will turn it back over to John.